Hodge Lodge number 2 at the 622 Saltwater Aquarium. Taping date 5/14/74, play for 74.
We're off to the forest to see Miss Tree. She lives in a house that is mostly green, except for the chimney and windows and walls, and one or two places just down the halls. And it's filled with rabbits and newts and snails, and fat little puppies that wag their tails, and a whale and a tiger and elephants too. Well, maybe not elephants.
Hi. Do you like to watch fish and other animals that live in the water? I do too. And sometimes it's pretty hard, isn't it, unless you're a deep sea diver and go down and deep in the water and see all the things moving around. So where's a good place to watch fish? I bet you know. What do you think, David? Where's a good place to watch?
Ocean?
In the ocean is one good place. But sometimes you have trouble seeing way down into the ocean.
Aquarium.
An aquarium, right. An aquarium is sort of like a miniature ocean or a miniature pond. Have you ever had an aquarium?
Yeah, but not saltwater.
Not saltwater. So what kind of aquarium did you have?
Regular.
Regular water, fresh water. Or tropical. Well, there are all kinds. You can just go down to the pond and get a jar full of water and put some tadpoles in.
Or
right?
you can get minnows.
Right.
Goldfish.
Goldfish. Or if you want to have tropical fish, some of them live in warm, fresh water. You have to keep the temperature up. But a saltwater aquarium, you have to make the water just like ocean water. And that's a little different and a little more complicated, but you also can have some very beautiful animals. I invited a friend of mine to come today and show us some of his saltwater animals and how to set up a saltwater aquarium. So we'll find out about that in a couple of minutes. But I thought you'd like to see these fish. Now, you know these aren't real fish, but they're brightly colored like some of the fish in the ocean. Can you tell what they're made out of, Karen?
Material?
Well, ribbon, right. This is a special kind of ribbon. This pink fish is made from a special kind of ribbon that comes from Japan. And one of my Japanese friends named Mutsumi Ishida. Does that sound like a Japanese name? Mutsumi Ishida. Just brought these to me today, and all the way from Philadelphia. And this she made out of ribbon from Japan, and this one she made out of ribbon from Philadelphia. But they both look like really fancy fish, and they have little strings on that are invisible, and you can hang them up and make a mobile out of them.
You didn't get it. You were going up, you didn't have it.
Well, I might do that later. I'm still thinking what to do with them. But my friend Mr. Spellman doesn't have any pink fish at the discovery table or any green fish, but he has lots of other colors you'll be surprised at. And Aurora, are you ready to go over and meet Mr. Spellman? Okay. Let's go. Hi, Mr. Spellman. I'm certainly glad you could make it with all your friends to Hodgepodge Lodge today. And these are my friends, Karen and David.
Hi.
Hi.
How are you?
And I'm sure they have lots of things that they would like to ask you.
What would you like to know about these fish?
Are there electric eels right there?
No, that's not an electric eel. That's called a blue and yellow ribbon eel. That's quite a creature there. You can get a closer look at him if I bring him forward a little bit. You see that face on him? He looks like a piece of ribbon, like the other fish are made out of. And right behind him there is a hermit crab, just like this one right over here, you see. Okay? Now this ribbon eel is a very expensive saltwater creature. How much do you think he would cost?
$22.
$22? Well, would you like to try a little bit higher? No, not quite that much. That fish costs $40. $40? That eel. That's right. That's very expensive.
Where does he come from?
This particular eel comes out of the Orient or around the Philippines.
Oh, my goodness.
And it's a long distance. It's about 14,000 miles. And they have to come in a little bag, of water, and hopefully they make it in real nice shape, like this one is right here.
And does he always keep his mouth open?
This one always keeps his mouth open. Now the reason why they do this is to try to scare off any larger fish that might come after them, because a lot of creatures in the sea have to have some means of protecting themselves. And you see your hermit crab right here has a shell to protect himself from other fish. Your seahorses here have a tough skeleton that helps to protect them against other fish.
Could we get a close look at a seahorse?
The seahorse? I think the seahorse will be very cooperative and come right out here.
They're so dark.
Normally, you see the seahorses as dried creatures in a store, but now these are very much alive, as you can see, and they will swim around. Your seahorses live around very shallow areas, very close to shore, and they will attach themselves onto just about anything that they can get close to.
He's hitching right onto the hermit crab.
Mm-hmm.
Children, do you understand about hermit crabs, that that's whose shell he's living in?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
What kind of shell? Is it a crab shell?
No,
or
snail
he's living
shell.
in an old snail shell?
That's a snail shell, that's correct. Speaking of snails, I'll show you one thing that is a large snail. Now, of course, you don't see many hermit crabs that can live in anything of this nature right here, but this is, what kind of shell do you think? Do you know the name of this? No, no.
You've got the right letter to start with, hasn't she?
That's the right letter. Begins with a C, and it is a large snail. It's called a conch snail, and this is a conch shell. Of course, the living creature is no longer in here.
Could they feel that?
Sure.
That's so beautiful and
it's very pretty.
Satiny
Now, believe it or not, the area that these come from, the people like to eat these. They're a delicacy, and I've eaten some of these myself, believe it or not, and they call them conch fritters.
Oh, you mean
the snail that lives in there, right?
I have some
They're very
shells.
good.
The snail's rare?
The snails aren't very rare. No, there's a lot of these. Some snails are rare, but this one is fairly common. Very interesting.
There are a lot of different kinds of conchs, aren't there?
There are a lot of different types of conchs.
I have one like that, but it's a lot smaller.
Mm-hmm.
We have some like that in Maryland that are, a lot of people call them conchs, but they're really whelks.
That's right. That's correct. A lot of times at Ocean City, you may see some of those. You can collect them on the beach.
Can we look at this funny creature here with the blue eyes?
Mm-hmm. This right here has a very strange name. This is called a porcupine fish, and you can see the eyes, how he can look any direction that he pleases, and he has almost a greenish or bluish tint to his eyes. Now when this fish is scared, you see these small spines on him? He has spines all over him.
Oh, yeah.
Now he will blow himself up to about twice his normal size, and this scares any other fish from trying to eat him. Now, of course, it's just like with a porcupine, a real live porcupine. If a larger animal tries to eat the large porcupine, he gets a lot of quills and spines in his mouth. So they don't like to eat these too often.
Couldn't you scare him?
Well, I tell you, I could scare him, but they don't like to be scared too often, and I'm afraid that he would get very frightened in this small container.
What does he eat?
This porcupine fish right here is rather a hog. He will eat just about anything that he can get hold of. A little bit earlier, we saw where the porcupine fish tried to eat our starfish here.
Oh, where's
so
he
we had to remove the porcupine fish out of the tank, and here's our starfish in the back. If I can get him out here.
Children, do you know what starfish can do if they accidentally lose a piece of an arm to a porcupine fish or some other enemy? What's one thing they can do? We can't. Right, we can't grow a new arm.
That's right.
But
it's a little.
Can. Is he all tangled up?
The starfish is all tangled up. He feels at home around this eel, but you can get a pretty good look at him right here. Now you see, this is a little bit different starfish than the type you're used to seeing.
Oh, he's beautiful.
This is very pretty, and he is called a bristle starfish. You can see all those bristles on him. Now,
where's he from?
This starfish is also from the Philippines. Now, of course, the ones that you probably are used to seeing are the ones that come out of the Atlantic Ocean, and they have much wider and thicker arms to them.
Can a porcupine fish scared like a shark or anything?
Well, some of the porcupine fish get very large. You'd be surprised. Some of them get up over a foot in length. I've seen some very, very large ones. And I don't know if they could scare a shark, but I don't think that a shark would try to eat one, I'll tell you that.
It hurt.
It would probably hurt, so I think the sharks probably leave them alone.
That bluefish, he seems like a different kind. He never swims like the yellowfish.
No, the bluefish is a very beautiful fish and looks as if he were painted, actually. This is one of the...
Fluorescent.
It does look fluorescent. In fact, when the lights are shining on this fish, he is very blue, bright blue, with a yellow tail.
And he's flat.
And he's very flat, too. You know, most fishes aren't that flat. They're wide. But this particular fish is very flat and long. Now, he would like to hide in the coral if he could. This is where you usually find them. They will try to hide in a piece of coral. In fact, I have a type of coral here that they like to hide in. This is a very beautiful type right here. Now, they will actually wedge themselves right into that coral in case any other fish is after them. Because, you see, most of these fishes live near what's called a coral reef. And if you touch that, you can feel how very sharp it is. Now, these coral reef fish have very, very tightly compacted scales. Do you know what scales look like? Have you ever seen a fish scaled?
These little things like that.
Right, okay. Your coral fish aren't harmed by the coral at all. They can swim right into there, and they do very, very nicely. And of course, he's actually easing himself over towards that piece of coral, even though it's not in the water. You see that? He's actually
really
he sees that coral, and he can maneuver very, very nicely.
He thinks he's back home.
That's right.
What's he called?
That is called a blue tang. Very beautiful fish. Now,
Why does he swim like the yellowfish?
He's very frightened at the moment.
He is trying to hide.
He's trying to hide.
But you very kindly took all the hiding places out so we could get a better look at them. Maybe you better tell the children about setting up whether you would have all these fish in one aquarium or...
Okay. Normally, in an aquarium of this size, you wouldn't put this many creatures in there. You would have maybe half this particular number. The reason being that if they're too crowded, they're not really very happy. You only want, especially in this size tank, only 3 or 4 specimens, particularly of this size. When they are very crowded, they may get to fighting amongst themselves, so you can't have that. Normally, in a tank of this size, also, you would have about 3 or 4 pieces of coral, just like we just showed you, that you could put in the tank, which would give them some protection, some place to hide.
It takes that room.
It does take up room, that's correct.
But it makes it look nice, too, you know. You want to make it look like
it's pretty.
Bit of scenery where they came from.
It's pretty. In fact, there are so many different types of coral. One of the major and most fun things to do with the coral is to decorate the tank. I can show you. Here's one type of piece of coral, and I might ask you what that looks like.
Mussel?
A mussel?
Fossil, he said.
Fossil?
They do have fossils like that.
It looks like a type of flower. In fact, the living coral looks very much like a flower. This is called brain coral, and this is very heavy, and it looks actually like a human brain. So this is one of the rare and exotic pieces of coral that you don't see very often. It's very pretty. And of course, in the tank itself, it would be very nice looking.
Children, do you think Mr. Spellman knows a lot?
Yeah.
Can you figure out how?
The yellowfish?
Well, let's find out how he got to be so knowledgeable. And then he'll tell us about them all before he goes. Don't worry.
Well, several years ago, I was at a school fair, and they had a ping pong throw. Have you ever seen those, where you throw a ping pong in a jar? You see these at most of school fairs, and there's a lot of them. And at any rate, I was down to about my last nickel, and I went and I threw the last ball that I had into a little jar, and it landed right in the jar, and I won the goldfish. Well, from that point, I got very interested in keeping these fish, and now I've been working in this around these aquariums for about 11 years.
Yeah. Do you work in a store? You own a store?
I work in a store. I manage a store called Seabreeze Aquarium.
Seabreeze.
Right.
You can go and see lots more.
So we have about 50 aquariums with all of these types of fishes. We have several thousand of these, and if you can imagine that, and this is just a small sample of the many types. Now, you had asked me before what this yellowfish is. Well, this yellowfish here is sort of a kissing cousin to the bluefish, you might say. Have you ever heard of the breakfast drink called Tang? Well, this is called a yellow tang. Now, he's very frightened, of course, that I'm after him. Hmm? Looks like a kissing fish, if you know what a kissing fish is. He looks very much like a kissing fish.
Could we get him out in this
I
little individual
think we
case?
could take him out and put him in
He
a
is
small
so
case.
beautiful. He reminds me
This
of a
is
canary.
this is one of the prettiest fish you'll ever find, and we'll put him right here if we can catch him. Now, of course, he's going to try to get away.
This is a different way of going fishing.
That's right. That's right. You see, now I'll chase him all around here, and we might just take the hermit crab right along with him.
Oh.
There he is.
I see. You've had years of experience.
And he likes to splash quite a bit. Now, there he is. Now, you can get a very, very close look at him this way, and you can see how very pretty this fish is.
He's a little cramped.
He is a little cramped. He wouldn't like to stay in here for very long.
He's certainly a strange shape with that long nose and high fins. Now, he lives in the coral reefs
This
too?
this fish lives in the coral reefs, and in fact, he is very narrow like the other fish, and very not very wide, and he can fit right in amongst the coral very, very well.
He doesn't look very happy. Let's put him back.
No, I think we'll put him back in there because he'd like to swim around with the other ones, I believe.
What are the important things to keep in mind when you want to start from scratch on a...
Well, when you're just starting out with a saltwater aquarium, you have to be a little bit patient when you begin. You can't just go and take all these types of fish, which are rather exotic, and throw them right into a tank. Your best bet is to set your tank up and let the tank run for about a week, and then you take some inexpensive little fish and put them in the tank and let them stay in there for a couple of weeks. After this time, you can add some of these rarer fish. Now, most of these fish in here, for instance, cost in the neighborhood of $20. But we have an awful lot of fish that are a lot less expensive. They're about $5.95 each, which is not cheap. But
Pretty?
But they're very beautiful. They're very beautiful.
But you want to be sure you've got your aquarium right before you put any fish in.
That's right. And
what makes it salty?
I have something here that I can show you that looks almost like table salt. Right here, if you look at that, it's not really table salt. It's a mixture of other ingredients that you'll find in the ocean, and of course this makes up the same type of seawater. If you ever go swimming in the ocean and you taste the salt that's in the ocean, this is what makes the water very salty. Now, one bag this size, this is 3 pounds, will make up about 10 gallons of water, and this is 10 gallons right here. So you can see there's an awful lot of salt in that water, a tremendous amount. Now, besides the salt, we have to be concerned with a little device that checks how much salt is in the water. Now, this is a rather important little device. This is called a hydrometer. Okay? This is the same thing that your father uses when he gets his antifreeze checked. Now, with this, we can put this right into the water, and we can check exactly how much salt is in there. Now, if this were floating in fresh water, it would sink to the bottom, but since it's in salt water, it will actually float right up the top there. Okay?
Be 1,020.
Well, right. This is okay. There's a little extra reading here, and that's 1020 to 1025. Okay, and that's where we like to keep what's called the density of the water. Now, the density means how much salt is put in the water. If you put twice as much of this salt in the water, what do you think would happen?
The fish would get too much salt.
The fish would get too much salt, exactly. The water would be too salty. So you have to put the right amount of salt in, and this is the way we check that out. Now, do you know the areas of the world that these fish come from?
Oh, probably from oceans.
From the oceans.
Right down.
What areas do you think they come from? What countries can you think of?
Florida.
Florida, that's very
Japan.
good. Japan. Some of these, in fact, are from very close to Japan, from the Philippine Islands. And our seahorses here, we have some seahorses that live around Florida. And we have some that come from Hawaii and all over.
Pacific.
From the Pacific, right. Now, from the Indian Ocean, too. That's right. Now, you have to remember one thing. These fish live in what are called tropical areas. Now, when you hear the word tropical fish, that means they live in warm water. That's very good, very good. How do you think we keep that water warm?
You just keep it room temperature, like 70.
Room temperature. Suppose the temperature gets very cold at night, say in the winter. What do you do then?
You have to warm it. You have to put like a heater in.
A heater, okay. Well, here's a little heater that we have, and this helps to keep the temperature warm. I can just show you this. This is very easy to use, and this just sits right in the water, basically, and you can see what that looks like right there. Okay.
And something's making bubbles.
Mm-hmm. We have a little pump that pumps air, okay, and that air is pumped through a piece of tubing right here. This is called airline tubing, and it will pump air all the way through this long tube and back, and it gives it an effect of looking like water is moving. And of course the fish have to breathe just like we do, so they breathe the air in from the circulation of the water.
How about that one over there by David? You said in David's special, why you have that one in a separate
Oh, now
aquarium?
this is an interesting story. This fish right here is called a lionfish.
Can you move it out front a little
I sure
carefully?
can. We have to move this one very carefully, and I'll tell you why. This is called a lionfish or a turkey fish, and it is very poisonous. Now, if you look on the top back of the fish, you see those spines that are sticking up there? Okay. If you were to touch those spines right there, you would have a very, very painful wound, okay? And there's poison in those spines. So when we handle these, we really have to be very careful with them. This is not the type of fish that you want to take out with your bare hands, I'll tell you that.
Where does he come from?
This particular specimen comes from the Philippine Islands. And we get quite a few of these, and they're very popular because they're so interesting looking.
I guess he's hiding around back here. See, he'll probably
so
move back.
pretty.
He is, isn't he beautiful? Now this way you can see him looking right over there towards you.
Does he remind you anything of a lion?
Not much.
They're
Well,
called lionfish because those fins look like the lion's mane, you see.
Do they poison their prey, other fish to eat, or is that
These
poison just
these
protection?
generally don't try to poison any other fish. They use it much like the porcupine uses his spines. They use that as protection. And if another fish comes near them, they take those spines and they jut them forward. And the other fish knows better than to try to eat this thing because he doesn't want a mouthful of spines.
His back tail has a motion.
Yes, it does. The back tail is almost always moving, if you notice. These like to sit still, though. They're not a swimmer like a lot of these other fish. They like to sit on a piece of coral head and they wait for their food to come swimming by, and nothing much bothers them. They're very.
Just sting it,
Mm-hmm. Well, they can sting the other ones, but basically they'll just take one big bite and that's about it.
Are all these fish full grown? I mean, this is the size they...
A lot of these fish, surprisingly, are just babies. Now, the lionfish that we just saw, for instance, will sometimes get very large, sometimes over a foot in length, which is extremely big, and you have to be very careful if you're swimming around the coral reef not to step on them or swim into them. And now I have one of these fish at home in an aquarium. You see this fish with the polka dots right here?
I was going to ask you about that.
Mm-hmm. That's an interesting fish, and that fish right there will get extremely large, extremely large. He will get about 2 feet, at least. Now,
Can you come out? What's
He
he
must
called?
be a baby then.
now what do you think? What sort of name do you think he would have with all those polka dots? Can you think of a name?
Zebra?
No, that
Zebras
would be
have
with stripes.
Pogofish?
With polka dots.
Polka dot fish?
Okay, that's very close. He's in a family of fish called groupers. Okay, almost all of which get very large. This is called a polka dot grouper or a panther fish. Have you ever seen a panther?
Mm-hmm.
You know what a panther looks like? Had spots, right?
A leopard?
A leopard. There are some fish called leopard. This is a panther, and a lot of these fish are named for things that they look like. For instance, your little seahorse. It's right next to the panther there.
Looks like a horse.
Looks like a horse's head, and he was named Seahorse because he looks like a horse that swims in the sea. Now
See, is there anything we've missed in here? I think there's one little bright one that's...
Do anything unusual to protect himself?
The thing with the panthers is that they get so large that in itself is protection for them. And they like to hide down in the caves and dark areas. He's not very comfortable being in this net here because he gets very excited.
Who's it? Oh my, they all...
Oh, we have a whole group of them.
Too good a
Whole
fisherman.
group of them in the net now.
I really wanted to look at the pretty orange one.
Now
Let's see. Yeah.
this orange fish right here that we have in the net is called a clownfish. Okay? Now there are a whole lot of different little clownfish.
He has a blue stripe on his face.
It has a bluish stripe on his face. And this is very, very, very pretty fish. A lot of times you'll see a whole lot of these living together. You might see 50 or 100 of them living in a school together, very close.
Hey, turn
And
around,
they're very,
clownfish.
very beautiful. We could get a better look at him.
Yes, he's
Hiding his face
maybe his
in
head's
the
caught
net.
in the net.
He's shy.
He is shy. He is shy.
Oh,
So we'll just let him stay
find
back
his
there
way out.
and
It
find
looks like
his
he
way
got
out.
stuck in a corner of the net.
That's right.
Well, children, you think you're all inspired to go home and save your pennies. How much of an investment does it take to just start out with the basic things?
A tank this size, you can get started for between $40 and $50, and that's everything that you need. You would get your pump and your filter and your salt that recreates the ocean water fairly closely,
And a couple of
a
fish.
light and a couple of fish. That's right. And the best way is to start off with just a couple of fish that don't cost too much to begin with.
Aurora, what do you think of all these beautiful creatures? He must have a fin caught in there.
I think he has a fin caught in there.
Aurora's toenails are always getting caught in my sweaters, too.
That's
Everybody
right.
has their problems. Well, that certainly is a beautiful collection.
Does the orange fish protect himself?
The orange fish protects himself. I don't know if you've ever heard of a little animal called a sea anemone. Have you ever heard of one of those?
No.
Okay. A sea anemone is a little type of animal that looks like a jellyfish.
Or sometimes like a flower.
Almost like a flower. And they live right in there. And these sea anemones will sting any other fish that comes near them except for the clownfish. So if the clownfish sees another fish beginning to gobble him up or come after him, he quickly dives into that sea anemone. And in fact, we have an aquarium where I work with a whole tank full of sea anemones and clownfish, and you can see that very thing.
Why does he just let the clownfish in there? Why don't he sting them?
He doesn't sting the clownfish, and nobody is quite sure why. There are a couple of ideas, but
just one of those things.
They live together, and they seem to be very good friends.
Well, nature is full of little surprises like that the animals have worked out various adaptations. Which do you like best, Karen, of all these things we have here in the tank?
He's getting stucker.
Which one do you think is the prettiest or the most interesting? The lionfish.
The lionfish.
How about you, David?
All of them.
All of them.
David's going to have to save a lot of money.
That's right. You're going to have to save an awful lot.
Thank you very much for coming, Mr. Spellman.
Thank
It's been
you.
Fascinating. And you really have been learning a lot, I'm sure, on the job. And
oh, yes.
Probably in practice, too, all from one little goldfish.
How about that?
I'm glad you could come to Hodgepodge Lodge today and meet Bob Spellman and join Karen and David and me in finding out about how to start a saltwater aquarium. And I hope you have a chance to see one and maybe even start your own. Remember, you need salt and tank and sand and
coral,
a little heat, right, and coral. Have fun with fish. See you next time.
This program was made possible through funds contributed by members of the Maryland Center for Public Broadcasting. Pre-recorded in the studios of the Maryland Center for Public Broadcasting.